There's a story to be told, a future to behold. There is more to who we are than what they hear. We have love within our soul, fire in our bones. We've got everything it takes to make it here. There's much more within our soil, more than just our oil. We can grow the food to feed the whole world square. Agriculture is the key, there's treasure in the trees. The time is now, the land is green, wealth is here. This is our nation, this is our land. Nigeria is ours, we have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, wealth is here. There are 200 billion dreams, any one of these is able to begin a spark and change the world. There's innovation everywhere, from Abba to Ife to Kaduna. The land is green, the wealth is here. Yeah, this is our nation, this is our land. Yeah, Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now. The land is green, the wealth is here.
If you take a look around, from the north to south, there are opportunities to make it here. But if all you ever dream is to go overseas, tell me how you'll ever know that wealth is here. Oh, yeah, oh.
This is our nation, this is our land. Oh, Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now. The land is green, the wealth is here. So pass on the baton, pass on the torch. Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now. The land is green, the wealth is here. Oh yeah. So this is our nation, this is our land. Oh yeah, Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now. The land is green, wealth is here.
The Business of Agriculture Masterclass is back, and this time it's all about you. We understand how talk can look easy but become daunting with practice, and that is exactly our focus for this year. Agric in Practice. 3 days, 9 sessions, 20 plus speakers, 8 value chains. Join Agric experts from September 27th to 29th, 2022, as they discuss the best practices for maximum results in your agric venture, answer critical questions about the specific challenges you face, and teach you how to tackle those challenges to achieve more profit for your business. What's more amazing? The masterclass is free and virtual, so you can join from wherever you are. All sessions will be streamed live on Facebook and YouTube. Visit www.businessofagriculture.org to register for the Business of Agriculture Masterclass today. This is brought to you by the Private Sector Advisory Group of the UN SDG Fund.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and apologies for that. My mic was muted. Welcome to the launch session of the Business of Agriculture Masterclass 2.0, tagged Agriculture in Practice. My name is Dr. Godwin Atse, and I will be your moderator for this session. A brief background of the masterclass. The masterclass is a vision of the United Nations SDGs Private Sector Advisory Group Cluster 5. The inaugural Business of Agriculture Masterclass tag hashtag ThinkAgric was held from the 5th to the 7th of July 2021 and focused on spotlighting opportunities available across various agriculture value chains and exploring how to harness these opportunities for income generation. The second edition of the masterclass, we featured 9 sessions across 3 days, and we focused on exposing farmers and other practitioners to the best practices across common agri value chains, the challenges they are likely to face, and how they can overcome these challenges. This will basically form the fulcrum of our discussion for the next 3 days. But before we go into that, we will go on a short break now. And when we are back, we will go deeper into the practice of agriculture in Nigeria. To take this further in this session, let's welcome the co-chair of the United Nations Private Sector Advisory Board, Ms. Ololade Johnson Agiri, for a goodwill message.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here on this auspicious occasion of the second edition of the Business of Agriculture Masterclass series, organized by the Private Sector Advisory Group to discuss pathways to make a living through engagement in agriculture as a business. I'd like to start by appreciating members of the Private Sector Advisory Group and recognizing our special guests who, despite their busy schedule, found time to be here on this platform to engage us all on the Masterclass series. Thank you and good morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you officially to the second edition of the Business of Agriculture Masterclass series, hosted by the UN Private Sector Advisory Group in Nigeria. The program is supported by the Office of the Senior Special Advisor to the President on SDGs with the objective of tapping into profitable opportunities in agriculture to build wealth and achieve financial freedom in all its forms in order to drive the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria. The Private Sector Advisory Group was formed in April 2015, where a body of concerned organizations within the private sector, academia, NGOs, CBOs converged together to work in conjunction with the public sector through the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs and Vice President, as it was clear that to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria, it would only be done through a concerted effort and partnership of multiple stakeholders. To ensure effectiveness and reach, the group was divided into clusters based on different thematic groups of the SDGs. One such cluster was the agribusiness and manufacturing cluster, who has worked in partnership with other key stakeholders to deliver the Business of Agriculture Masterclass series, which began on July 2021 and is currently running. The maiden edition held in August and over 10,000 participants across all media handles. The rationale behind the masterclass is to achieve awareness and develop capabilities in the business of agriculture The series aims to awaken a social consciousness of the opportunities that are bound in the agricultural sector and in Nigeria. There are 9 sessions. The first session will provide a background and build a case for farming investing in agriculture, all the opportunities, the organized private and public sector, academia, NGOs, and other partners converge in one single audacious goal of driving towards the achievement of the SDGs together as one. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, we hope this collaboration will set the standard beyond Nigeria of how to achieve sustainable development through collective partnership for development to ensure that no one, especially the most vulnerable, are left behind. I'll be glad to end by thanking our partners, collaborators, participants, and observers once again. And I wish you a successful masterclass series. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation from Lolade. Um, Let me reiterate that Lolade is actually the executive director for BAT Foundation, and we appreciate your key remarks, your welcome remarks for this wonderful event that we are holding today. Basically, and I think one point that you made, which is very striking, is that this group is actually navigating and showing the way on how Nigeria can actually reach the SDGs, considering that unlike the MDGs, the SDGs have to be driven by the countries themselves taking the leadership, being in the driver's seat of their development, in this case, sustainable development. Once again, thank you so much for the welcome remarks. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, um, we will be our next speaker will be presenting a keynote address, and she is the founder and chief executive officer of Farm Shop Pantry Retail and Distribution Ventures. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ms. Cynthia Monsumola Omoro to deliver her presentation, please.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Godwin. Such a delight to join everyone this morning. I am honored to have been invited to give us a remark at the beginning of this series. This is a very laudable project, and I want to say thank you, especially to the organizers, especially the country management Nigerian leg of the private sector advisory group. It is a delight to see new actions being taken within the agricultural sector for our development. As a practitioner myself, I am excited to be here today, and I am happy that we're all going to be learning new technologies, new models, innovative ways to actually drive the sustenance of the agricultural sector in our country. The there is no, I mean, I like the mantra of the farmers in Nigeria: no farmer, no nation, no farmer, no food. It is very important for us to note that at this critical juncture in time, one thing that has become very clear that we can't do without is food. And for us to now ensure that we do not just get food, but we get qualitative food at the right volume, at the right time, we need to rise to the occasion as citizens in country and drive the growth of the agricultural sector. There is no doing that without collaboration. And that is what I believe that the Business of Agriculture Masterclass seeks to achieve by bringing together stakeholders to drive this process. I want to charge and challenge everyone present who signed on to this program today to note that the growth of the agricultural sector in Nigeria lies on the impact and the effort that we all can jointly bring to table. No one can do it alone, not the government, not citizens, not the private sector. We all have to work in tandem. We all have to work together. Over the years, the agricultural sector in Nigeria has suffered critically from fragmentation, whereby government works in silos and the private sector thinks that they can drive production all by themselves. The truth, from personal experience, I've come to realize, having spent some time, I spent 4 years serving as senior advisor to the Minister of Agriculture between 2016 and 2016 and 2019. I realized that the only way we can move this sector forward is for us all to begin to collaborate, because each person has unique strengths and unique opportunities that we can then leverage to drive and enhance growth in the sector. One other critical factor that has become very clear that we must begin to drive is the investment in our young individuals, young citizens. We need to begin to encourage and support younger actors in the agricultural sector, especially because they have the gift of youth and the strength of youth to drive this process. Women and young people are a critical component for the growth of the agricultural sector in Nigeria, and I stand in that position to encourage each one of us signed on today to begin to leverage these opportunities and synergies to drive the agricultural sector forward in Nigeria. What can we all do as individuals? I will constantly say and remind citizens and people who care to listen that for Nigeria to stand together, Nigerians must rise to the occasion. There is no way we can drive the agricultural sector if we constantly hope to depend on aid from donors and foreign investment alone. There is a huge component that citizens must play. And I like to not just use myself as an example for championing this cause over the last couple of years. I have great references in other strong women like myself, like Ndidi Nwuneli, like Yemisi Ronloye of Sultry Foods, who have put in efforts to ensure that we work across varying value chains, from poultry value chain where I act significantly, and Yemisi working in the cassava value chain, and Ndidi also cutting across the spice value chain with her Spice Ace Foods production company. We have begun to see a lot of new trends emerge in the sector. And what I hope to see over the next couple of years is how we can begin to use technology to drive growth and enhance productivity in the sector. And the best time to log onto that is now. COVID presented to us new opportunities, new vista of opportunities to begin to look inwards without necessarily fully depending on external support. It's time for us to begin to take our local technologies and innovate in a manner that will help us become sustainable, either at primary production level, processing, and even taking it stronger at the value chain of managing logistics, managing food waste, and ensuring that we are able to provide enough for ourselves as a people. I am super excited to be a part of this masterclass series this time around because I have seen the profile of the speakers and facilitators and coaches, and I am certain that they will deliver adequately, share with us insight and knowledge that will help us drive growth within this sector. Never a better time to be in the agricultural sector. I have been here for upwards 18, going on 21 years across production, primary production. I have worked in policy and I am back in the private sector. And I have to say that I am super elated to see all of the change that is currently occurring within the sector. And I cannot wait to share more insight with you. For young people who are logged on, trust me, this is the coolest time to be an actor in the sector because you can bring your grit, you can bring your energy, you can bring your use of technology, you can bring your diversity, and we can all, as a collective, change the face and the narrative of Nigeria's agricultural landscape. I am excited for the organizers and I am I am glad to be here. And I look forward to sharing knowledge with everyone as time goes on. I always say no one is an island. We can learn from each other. I am happy to learn from all of you. And I am constantly willing to share from my experience because I know that together we can make Nigeria the food basket of Africa. If you look at the map of Africa and you tilt it to the right, that image looks like a gun. And the beauty of that gun is where the trigger is where Nigeria is positioned on the map. And I believe that Nigeria and South Africa will play a critical role in the growth of the agricultural sector and food sustenance in Africa. And I want to see all of us here logged on work together to drive that change and bring about that trigger, actually actualize the trigger that we are, because it's innate to us. The can-do spirit of the African and the Nigerian person is all that we need to drive this growth. There is available resource through this masterclass and beyond for us to make this actionable. I can't wait to see us all work together to make this happen. Please take this as from an excited and happy and passionate woman who has played in the sector for over 20 years. Let us work together. Let's collaborate. I'm happy to see partners from IITA. I'm happy to see people from the private sector, organized private sector. And I'm so excited that we will transform Nigeria's agricultural landscape and we will become the true giant of Africa. Do have a wonderful learning session. And I hope to see you all in the breakout sessions and breakout rooms as we go along. Thank you so much for listening. Have an amazing time. Thank you, Dr. Godwin.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for those passionate words of encouragement. It's so exciting to catch up with you today once again. But just to mention some of the things that Cynthia was able to emphasize. One, I could hear that we should work together. We should pull together. This is not a time to work in silos. And I think this is something that is very important. And this event provides us that opportunity to actually harness our energies, put our thoughts, our experiences together. And then she also mentioned something about inclusion, talking about the youth and also the women. She emphasized that for us to have a sustainable development, then we need to bring on board the energies that radiates among the youth, but also that comes from the women in order to have sustainable development. Again, she talked about the need for us to shy away from aid. Aid, we have received aids for several couple of years, but what have become, what has actually become of aid to us? We need to see how we can change that narrative. And I think personally, I agree with Cynthia. We need to produce, we need to feed ourselves, and there are a lot of opportunities in that. But again, we need policies that will facilitate trade for Africa to actually play its role in the global space. And then she mentioned about COVID. Yes, COVID brought a lot of opportunities for us. It provided a case study that indeed Africa can survive if we look inwards. We need not to allow those opportunities to go down the drain. We need to take advantage of the opportunities. And then I was very excited when she said that no one is an island. We can learn from each other. We can share from each other. And this is what the masterclass brings on board. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for being on this platform, and thanks specifically to Cynthia for your key key remarks at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is going that will give us a keynote is Mrs. Ndidi Nwuneli. She is going to speak, but the person that will speak on her behalf is Mr. Temitope Adegoroye. So may I invite Temitope to have the space and share with us the keynote.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to everyone for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Temi Adeguroye. I'm the managing partner at Sai Consulting Agriculture and Mission Limited. And I'll be speaking on behalf of our co-founder and executive chair, Mrs. Ndidi Nwuneli, who unfortunately is unable to attend this meeting. I'll be delivering the keynote remark on her behalf. I know I have about 10 minutes, and I will just be as brief as possible. I want to say a big thank you to the Private Sector Advisory Group for organizing this Business of Agriculture Masterclass. I definitely believe that this is happening at the right time, especially coming out of this year's African Green Revolution Forum in Kigali, as well as the conference that Sahel Consulting that we organized last week, the Sahel Food Systems Changemakers Conference, bringing together various partners across the food and agricultural landscape in Nigeria to discuss how we can actually curb the food crisis, curtail the food crisis that we have, that we're currently faced with in Nigeria. And I will just start by just quickly saying a few things around, some of the known statistics. That Nigeria is primed for agricultural excellence, and I think we all believe that we're on the same page with that. About 36% of the people employed in Nigeria actually employed in the agricultural sector. We also know that 22% of the agriculture of our GDP currently is being contributed directly from agriculture. And there's a unique opportunity as well in the sense that we are top producers of a number of crops, a number of value chains. We're very key players. Cassava and yam, we are the largest producers. We are second, largest for ginger, and it's been said many times our ginger in Nigeria is actually the best or one of the best in the world. We have about 84 million hectares of arable land, meaning that we have land to actually commit to agricultural production. And by 2050, we are projected to reach about 400 million people. That is a huge, huge opportunity for agriculture to really for us to use agriculture to address the food crisis that we have currently. But the issues that are currently that we're currently faced with are very real. With all the opportunities that we have, we are still we are food insecure. Food insecurity is a major threat in the country at the moment. Currently, we have about 5 million people who are malnourished in Nigeria, especially in the northern parts. About 44% of our children under 5 years old have chronic long-standing malnutrition. More than 32% of our children between 0 to 59 months currently are stunted, and about 11%, we have about 11% prevalence of undernutrition among women, and these are serious issues that we need to address. I would also like to mention that we all agree that we are spending a lot of our money, a lot of our income on food at the moment. Nigeria currently is spending about 57, very close to 60% of household income on food. That those are issues that we need to critically address. But I would like to state very two key facts. The first one is that agriculture in Africa, and Nigeria not being an exception, is no longer about culture alone. So it's not about the culture, but agriculture is now a thriving global business, which is actually projected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. So we have about $1 trillion market in our hands. And the second fact, which is known by many, is that entrepreneurs who are working in agriculture and food provide inputs, logistics, processing, and distribution of critical food and cash crops, livestock, and other support services to various partners in the sector. And they're actually responsible for up to 80% of the food that we handled, that we market, and also consume on the continent. So you see that there's actually a very big opportunity, market opportunity in agriculture, and that's why I think this topic around the business of agriculture, or agriculture as a business in Nigeria, is actually spot on. Technology is driving agricultural transformation. You will all agree with me that we have quite a number of technologies that have emerged through several innovations in agriculture in recent times. Sensors are currently being used to provide farmers with real-time information about the state of their crops. We have the practice of bioengineering, and we've seen how mobile applications are being used to actually transform information management system within agriculture, and also how commercial farms are trying to use automated technologies to actually, when I say automated technology, I'm talking about the likes of drones, the likes of aerial vehicles. How artificial intelligence is being used to actually predict the performance of crops on the field, and how fields could be managed. And just recently in Kigali, I was moderating a session for go-getters, uh, young agripreneurs in Africa who are coming up with innovative ideas, and they're basically in a pitching competition. And I was really amazed at the things I saw and I heard from young uh, people in Africa, including Nigerians, and this kind of innovations that they've actually come up with to tackle very key issues across several value chains, across several aspects of value chains in agriculture in Africa. And I thought to myself that we have a very big opportunity to actually really transform this continent through agricultural production. And the ag tech landscape continues to evolve. You see, in 2012, we had about 41 agricultural tech startups across Africa. By 2019, it's grown to about 360, 390. And currently, as we speak, it's over 400. And we have Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa topping the chart in terms of countries with the largest number of agtech companies in Africa. So Nigeria has a lot of very a very healthily growing agtech landscape. And investment in agtech startups in Africa has actually also climbed. Reaching close to 100 million USD by 2021, from less than 10 million in 2016. And entrepreneurs in agriculture uh, are really at the driver's seat, in terms of when you look at all the various aspects of agriculture, financial inclusion. You see entrepreneurs coming up with various innovations around digital smallholder finance, to provide payments, credit, insurance products to various actors across the value chain. We're seeing several crowdfunding platforms emerging. We're seeing several business to business, smallholder, farmer, data analytics intermediaries. We're seeing lots of electronic banking platforms coming up. Young people, women who are doing very amazing work in agriculture around financial inclusion. If you talk about advisory services, there are quite a number of agri businesses that have emerged trying to provide advisory services across several aspects of the value chain, from business to technical service provision. Market linkage, there are quite a number of businesses today that are providing market linkages, trying to bridge the gap between primary production on the farm and market. And we can actually go on and on and on and start to mention a few of these entrepreneurs and how they're actually thriving within agriculture. Supply chain management, we've seen organizations develop traceability solutions, supply chain management, ERP systems, logistics management solutions as well. And we have macro agri sector intelligence, really organizations working with government to develop different dashboards, to really map data about agriculture, to make data available. Agricultural extension management systems. I've met quite a number of young people in Nigeria today that have actually started some private sector extension work to sort of bridge the gap between the one ratio 8,000 thereabout of agricultural extension, public agricultural extension officer to farmers in Nigeria. So you see that agricultural businesses in Nigeria are actually in the driver's seat of transformation. And entrepreneurs, they serve as essential linkages to stakeholders within the ecosystem. So you see agribusinesses playing critical roles in supporting smallholder farmers through inputs, extension services, data information, markets, financial services, cost reduction. You see agribusinesses and entrepreneurs, collaborating with research institutions and academic institutions like IITA, around research and development, around data insights and tools and resources to and innovative methods to actually work in agriculture. You're seeing lots of partnerships emerge, and you're seeing lots of funders that are trying to work through some scalable technologies that are to increase return on investment in agriculture. So entrepreneurs are very, very critical, and we need to start to see at the end, as I close, we need to start to see agriculture as beyond just it's beyond fun, beyond culture. It's a thriving business, and like I said, it's a $1 trillion industry that we actually have in our hands, and it has the massive potential to transform our continent and to transform Nigeria. And we have what it takes in our hands to actually, curb the food crisis that we face now in Nigeria. I just want to drop a few points as I wrap up around some of the lessons that we've learned from agri entrepreneurs that I think in this next couple of days business masterclass, it will be good for you to take, handy. The first is that technology is a great enabler and lever for agricultural and economic transformation. And the second is that sustainable and profitable business models are built on inclusion, they're built on innovation, they're built on agility, they're built on partnerships, positive storytelling, and providing local solutions to solve the critical issues that we're currently facing in agriculture in Nigeria. And the agricultural sector can provide sustainable solutions to implement economic instability, climate change issues, malnutrition in the country, by leveraging and supporting the innovative work of agribusinesses. Rural livelihoods can also be improved by building essential bridges between the smallholder farmers and urban markets. And entrepreneurs serve as critical role models as well for an emerging generation of young talents and a formidable workforce in agriculture. And there are quite a number of platforms now. We have the African Food Chain Makers Institute, we have the IIT Youth in Agriculture. We have quite a number of platforms, that are critical to building synergies, connecting and empowering and scaling agri SMEs across several value chains in the country. So agri-food entrepreneurs are positioned to drive the transformation of agriculture and food in Nigeria. And they are actually also very positioned to ensure that the continent feeds itself and becomes a net exporter of food. And that's where our eyes should actually be, making sure that we produce enough to be able to feed ourselves and export food to almost every part of the world, and making sure that we get food from Nigeria on the shelves everywhere across the world. So this business masterclass is a very important session, and I want us to leverage this opportunity to actually learn, several innovative models. I wanted to try to highlight a few of them from this remark, but I know I don't have that time. But let's make sure that we get the best out of every facilitator here. We have very exciting, facilitators that they've gone through the length and breadth of agricultural value chains in Nigeria. They've done it. They know what models work and what needs to be tweaked in some other models. So let's grab this opportunity. And coming out of this business masterclass, my hope is that we have a lot more entrepreneurs who would have fire in their belly to actually work to transform the agricultural and food landscape. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I wish you an amazing next 3 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Temitope, for the keynote presentation. And I think one thing that you say that is quite striking is that there is opportunity in the agri sector. Anytime you hear that population is going to increase, definitely it means that people are going to feed. And if they were to feed, it means that someone needs to produce the food. Do you import or do you provide the food here? That is a big opportunity for investment for any discerning investor to capitalize on. And you estimated that to be in the region of $1 trillion market that is waiting for people to tap into. And then the other thing that you said is that, look, agriculture should goes beyond a culture. It is more than a culture. Today we have agriculture and the agri value chain into processing, into IT, into logistics and all that, into post-harvest management. These are opportunities that investors can key into in the agri space. It will also include delivery and supplies, all of this. And I think one other thing that you emphasized was that agriculture can play a role even in providing solution to the current challenges that we are faced with today, including climate change, for instance, rural livelihoods improvement. These are areas that agriculture can play a vital role. Thank you so much, Temitope, for coming in and the keynote. Ladies and gentlemen, the next person to speak will be Mr. Imal Silva, who serves on the board of several enterprises. But let me just say that for this session, I will simply put him as one who is a co-promoter of L&Z Sealet Agro. Um, can we bring him on the platform to give us um, a presentation?
Good morning, sir. Uh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, sir, and good morning, all the distinguished panelists and all the viewers from all over the world. It's truly a privilege to be on this panel, and I thank you for the opportunity. I just want to find out how many minutes do I have so that I can make sure that I stick to my time.
10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Okay, so I've been called to speak about sustainable agriculture, and this is a personal passion. Apart from the fact that I'm an agripreneur and I am also a lecturer at the Lagos Business School. I take urban and homestead farming, but more than being an entrepreneur and being a um, person that teaches, this is also a very personal thing to me. I'm an advocate for sustainability because I believe in the long term, and I want us to look at all our efforts through a filter of sustainability. So I'll give a brief definition, and then I would also now go a little bit into detail about what sustainable agriculture is. First and foremost, sustainability in the simplest form is thinking about meeting our needs for today without compromising the needs of the future generations. That is, whatever decisions we make in our sector, for example, in agriculture, it is important that we consider our needs with the needs of those future generations also in mind, so that what our action, our thoughts, our actions, our words will not compromise what they are also supposed to benefit from. So when you talk about sustainability, there are three pillars on which these decisions have to be made. One is the environmental health of globally of our environment, the social equity and economic equity in everything we do, in all our decision making. Whatever we do, how fair is it? And is the distribution of the wealth also considered so that over time, in the long term, what is a profit today does not turn to be not such a big profit in future because people are not only a few people in the value chain benefit and most other people don't benefit. And thirdly, it has to be economically viable, which I mean is the basic thing we all understand that of course it has to be profitable. But in considering these things, we now have, transiting people into a sustainable mindset is a gradual process because most times what happens is we put our immediate or short term or sometimes midterm needs in focus, and we want to be able to make money, we want to make sure that everybody has food, which is right. But when we now think in the long term, we have to consider a few more things. So when you consider sustainable agriculture, it pushes you a little bit beyond the agro value chain and or the agro value web, if I may call it, that we all know. It actually gets you to start thinking from a systems perspective, which means you think beyond agriculture into other fields of endeavor. Because to be able to achieve a sustainable um, model in our industry, and we want to be inclusive and we want it to be innovative, all that it takes may not necessarily be within our own value chain alone, meaning that We have to look at other specialties, other professions, other industries for solutions. So we now have to think from a systems perspective and not just from a value chain perspective, meaning you have to look at from an engineering perspective, from a health perspective, from a legal perspective, from different perspectives to be able to come up with solutions for the long term. And when we actually, if you actually want to, tread this path, it means that every from the upstream, pre-upstream to the upstream, midstream, and downstream in our sector has to look at things from a sustainable perspective. It means that we can't just think about the short-term needs. We have to think about how this thing will affect us in future, how it will affect our environment. When you talk about the environment, it talks about the. I mean, for example, let me give a classical case. The recent COVID issue we had, it was traced to wildlife that was actually eaten by, certain people. Now, meaning that sometimes when we go beyond what we usually do, we can actually infringe on areas we are not very conversant with, or we don't have knowledge, and we can take on microbes or take on organisms that we may not have full understanding of. And then when that happens, what happens is we now have a situation that is a bit more difficult for us to handle than what we're used to. So in everything we do, it's important, even as we go into all these sessions, in all these several days of sessions of these wonderful masterclasses, look at everything from a filter of sustainability. Look at every session, every topical area we think about from a sustainable perspective. Sustainable agriculture. We have a particular project I want to give from a personal perspective and from a particular project we are doing in real time, where we try to let people see that this is possible, where we integrate all our operations it's actually a demonstration park and a small teaching farm, and we try to show people how to integrate all your activities in such a way as to reduce, reuse, recycle as much as possible, and to minimize synthetic inputs as much as we can, unless we really need to under extreme conditions. So some of these considerations are things that it takes a while, it takes a lot of effort to get people to understand. But I feel that it is something that is important from the very beginning. If you're somebody who is actually who is planning to go into agriculture, is this somebody that is already in agriculture, somebody who's established? We need to still examine these things. And if you look at the SDGs, for example, the 17 SDGs, look at all of them. There is no sector like agriculture that touches each and every one of them, from zero hunger to no poverty to good health and well-being. I mean, responsible consumption and production. I mean, name it. What we do touches on everything. So it's important, I believe, that we take this from the very beginning of these sessions and look at everything from a sustainable perspective. And I also feel that if given the opportunity, I believe that there's enough innovation and capacity within even the experts you see, even in this gathering of people. There's so much within us to help us to be able to do things in a more sustainable manner. So I wouldn't want to take too much of our time. I would want to stop at this point and hand back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ima Silva, for your presentation. I think you emphasized um, more on the issue of sustainability. And that if we are looking at sustainability, we should look at sustainability in three dimensions, looking at sustainability around the environmental dimension, the economic dimension, and also the social dimension. We should approach agriculture um, in a system perspective, in your words, that is looking at agriculture holistically. Um, those were your thoughts and your remarks that you put on the table. Um, the question that many will be asking is how sustainable are the current agricultural practices that we are practicing in Nigeria. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, I think what we would do at this point is if you have your questions, put them together. I will be inviting the next speaker, giving her 5 minutes so that we can go through this session and then have some time to respond to your questions also. So let me first of all thank Mr. Imal for your remarks, and I'll invite Ms. Helen Eshe Emore to join the conversation and share some of her initial thoughts in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Godwin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I am going to be speaking from a marketing perspective in the agribusiness sector. I hope I'm correct on that. And that's based on my experience in value addition and also marketing. Whilst I share Cynthia's optimism about the sector, I believe that we would get the true value from this sector only when there is a better access to markets. And why am I saying that? It seems to me, from what I have seen so far, that farmers struggle a lot with accessing resources for making their inputs, whether it's their seeds, farm maintenance and management, getting fertilizers. They don't even have access to technology. So farmers are struggling a lot. And that's because most of them don't have forward contracts. They don't know how they're going to sell their products until it is harvested, and then the middlemen come and take everything and there's a glut. So I'm a strong advocate for value addition. I'm a strong advocate for food processing so that people can get value. And I'll tell you why. I'm currently operating in about 4 value chains, which is one, the cooking oil, groundnut oil, palm oil, honey, and cassava. And what have I found? What I've found is that by being in that space, we have been able to support farmers who previously did not have access to ready cash by giving them upfront payments for their harvest and for the goods they'll give to us as raw materials. And that helps them and encourages them to grow more of our inputs. So I believe very strongly that we need more people in processing, more people in marketing, in packaging, so that we can sell higher value products. And I am also driving this because of our experience in the oil and gas sector. What do? We drill crude and then we export it and then we buy petroleum products from abroad. If we are not careful, that's the same thing that is happening in the agriculture sector. Everybody is planting. During harvest, there's a glut. And then subsequently, the farmers are looking for money. But if we have more processors, we'll get better value for our money. I mean, when we do groundnut oil. A ton of groundnut oil at some point was going for as much as 300,000 per ton. But a ton of processed groundnut oil can be sold in the market for up to 1.5 million naira. And when I'm approached for export opportunities, a ton of groundnut oil in the international market is priced at $1,000 or so. And I'm saying, no, I don't want to sell crude groundnut oil in the market. I want to bottle it and sell it locally because I'm going to get like 5 times that amount if I retail in different sizes. So what am I saying? For those of us who want to go into agri, let's not just think about primary production, which is either farming or raising the animals. Let's think about packaging. Let's think about branding. Let's think about varieties. Let's think about modification. Let's think about modernization so that we can get better value in that sector. It is only when that begins to happen that the farmer who is at the bottom of the value chain, as far as I'm concerned, will begin to get true reward for their efforts. So I don't know how much time I have, but I believe that I will stop here for now and allow others take it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen, for those wonderful remarks. And I think it's something that we should look at. And this masterclass is giving us that opportunity in terms of how do we address the issue within the agri space beyond just the primary production. We have, as you spoke, it became clear that agriculture, and this also ties back to what Temitope said earlier, we should move beyond culture, which is mostly seen as primary production. Um, let's grow maize and then we sell it. Let's grow cassava and we sell it raw like that. The issue of value addition. And I think you brought some other industry that provides opportunity like packaging, branding, all of this, processing. These are opportunities that surely people can go into and create wealth and jobs. Thank you so much, Helen, for those points. And I know that several questions will be coming for you shortly. But before we take the questions, let's go to the next speaker, Dr. Manzo Daniel Megari, who is the Director General for Agribusiness Group in Kaduna. Please, can we give him the space to share some thoughts with us in the next 5 minutes on this subject?
Good morning and thank you for having me. First, I want to thank the organizers of the event for giving me this great opportunity. I'm supposed to talk about policy. Policy essentially is the regulatory framework that guides practices in a sector. And why do we need policies? We need policies so that the right enabling environment can be created to maximize the potential of any sector. Looking at the agricultural policy, you will find that agriculture itself is on the concurrent list of our constitution. And what that simply means is that the federal, the state, and the local governments can pursue their agricultural agenda independent of each other. Whether we've been able to make the most of this or not is a different story. But what I see is a situation where there have been duplication of functions, duplication of activities, working at cross purposes and all that. For me, a good recommendation will be a situation where we have these three tiers of government working together in a concerted manner to ensure that agriculture is pursued as a national agenda that eventually can be transformed into agribusiness. Because uh, all this while, until we saw the growth enhancement scheme, agricultural policies in Nigeria have been developmental in their approach. We didn't seek to deliberately create an enterprise in agriculture, and we thought that we will never get anywhere. In the first place, that has left the sector highly risky, with only smallholder farmers who have no option but to stay there until recently. So they've remained the dominant players there. So what do we need to do? We must look at our policies right away again and seek to address and seek to deliberately create an enterprise in this sector, because it is the sector that we have the most competitive advantage. If you look at trade is on the exclusive list. And if you consider that agriculture is the major driver of our economy, then you will probably see a situation where there is a contradiction here. If agriculture is on the concurrent list, we should and what we have to trade most importantly is agricultural produce. And then trade should also be on the concurrent list to enable state governments pursue their economic agendas as to develop the sector and trade internationally. But this is an issue that we have not seen, and I think this is an area that the private sector advisory group should look at very seriously. And like I said, we've seen a lot of policies from the GES, the APP, the Green Alternative, the NLTP, and then NATIP. But all these policies have remained short to medium term policies that require to be aligned to a long-term agricultural policy that enables sustainable development and all-inclusive development of the sector. So, but these disjointed policies, or will I say, standalone policies that have come, and each regime comes and they come up with a fresh policy, knocking down the other one instead of building on it, has resulted in a situation where the policies have not really been purposeful. And that now leads us to develop an appetite for ad hoc measures, ad hoc initiatives. For example, the Anchor Borrowers Program, as wonderful as it is, as beautiful as and as much as it has achieved, is an ad hoc arrangement that if we do not institutionalize it, at the end of this administration, the next administration may just jettison it, despite all that has been spent there, despite all the gains. So these are real issues that we need to do. We need to look at very seriously. And because government has approached agriculture largely from a developmental perspective, there has been very limited public-private dialogues that will enable the contribution of the private sector in policy that will seek to de-risk the sector. Because as we speak today, agriculture, as fantastic as it is, also remains the most risky sector in Nigeria today. That's why the money deposit banks will never give you a loan easily unless it is backed by a guarantee either from NISAL or from the central bank. So it's an issue that we need to look at very seriously. And as I said, bureaucracies are not mandated to deliver on business targets. They are mandated to deliver on social goals and targets. Therefore, the private sector and players within the private sector must necessarily engage government and ensure that the policies are tailored towards achieving the evolution of an enterprise in agriculture. This is the only way things we can get this handshake that previous speakers have talked about. That concerted effort will amount to nothing if we do not engage meaningfully, to the extent that the public sector listens to the players in the field who understand the dynamics and they feel the pinch. They face these challenges every day in the field. So it's extremely important that we look at things from this perspective. And as I said, our policies must be tailored towards de-risking the sector. And how do we achieve that? We look forward to seeing something like the national agricultural investment plans, through which all the various sectoral, sub-sectoral policies can align towards actually creating the enterprise that we are looking at. And once this happens, we will be able to also create mechanisms that enable and activate mechanisms that enable market discovery as well as price discovery. And to this, one thing comes to fore. The commodity exchange, the National Commodity Exchange, holds the key to unleashing this sector, because it is the most veritable platform through which the sector can be de-risked. But again, here we are with a commodity exchange that is wholly government-owned. What is necessary is that this commodity exchange be opened up to the private sector, so that government still sits back, hold a minority equity, and give a regulatory guidelines, the regulatory guidelines that enables enables the right environment for the private sector to do what they know best, which is business. The AFCTA also presents a major window for de-risking the factor and for a quantum leap in the sector. However, given the architecture of our agricultural landscape, dominated by small farmers who on their own are not viable and cannot compete, the issue of aggregators becomes very important, because each individual farmer at his level cannot compete. And when you talk about aggregation, then it goes back to what other previous speakers have talked about, which is the issue of creating clusters where you provide common services, where your input credits can be provided, so that these farmers can optimize their productivity, and then the aggregation will take place so that they have a critical mass that can attract big-time buyers and export market. One other thing, just like it has been mentioned, is that our policies must also be geared towards the value chain development. All this while, and because we have focused on development of agriculture only, we thought, and it focuses only on the production, we thought developing an enterprise, which is in the value chain, all our resources have gone into production. And at the end of the day, you end up with so much, we end up with so much glut during harvest, because there's no off-taker. For most of us that we want to go into, that are playing into agriculture, we are gradually realizing that going into production is actually poses a competition to the smallholder farmer. So why don't you just sit down and support them and aggregate? Support them with input credits and aggregate. That's the way forward. But also, governments need to look at this and create the right policies that will enable this and de-risk this practice. On a final note, what I'm going to say is that also the business of agriculture and the environment itself is becoming so dynamic by the day. And the greatest challenge that faces agriculture, especially in Nigeria, where the smallholder farmer is dominant, is the issue of climate change. Of course, if you look at the climate change policy, agriculture has been identified as the major contributor of about 68% to the nationally determined contributions. However, till this moment, there is no framework for the implementation of a climate smart agriculture. So these are gaps that we need to look at very seriously, because climate change is so insidious that the smallholder farmer does not even realize it is there, or he doesn't see it coming. But as he wakes up by the day, his fields are losing productivity. He's losing crops. When he stores crops, he's losing them, and floods are coming by the day. Unpredictable weather patterns are actually making life a lot more difficult for the smallholder farmer. And all that is required is for us to have a policy in place where these farmers can be enlightened and oriented to embrace certain traditional practices that are already climate smart, which they have abandoned. So things like agroforestry, to also deploy technology, to deploy measures for mitigation and the development of resilience. All these are issues that must be captured into a policy. The final thing I would like to talk about is, somebody has talked about extension service delivery. Everybody that is doing an outgrower or managing a cluster provides his extension, and there is no standard. And that's why our productivity is kind of low. We will require a policy that creates extension, that specializes extension delivery service, such that there will be a certification. And then we can have a kind of a pool, online pool, with somebody managing, maybe an organization or that, such that if I want to do rice, all I need to do is to go to that portal and look for an extension service delivery extension officers who specialize in cereals. If I'm going to do beans, I go there and I look for extension service, certified extension service officers who specialize in legumes or root crops and the likes. This way, it will enhance our productivity, and we can infuse climate smart practices as part of the curriculum, standardized and certified, so that we can achieve the potential that we hope to achieve. Because there's nothing wrong with having smallholder farmers if they are empowered with knowledge and capacity to produce optimally. Elsewhere, smallholder farmers drive the economy. So there's nothing big deal about what we are doing here. Then we also need to look at policies that will encourage controlled production. And that's where, like Temitope said, bringing in technology as an enabler to enhance production. Things like irrigation. We are at just 10% of irrigation in the whole of our farming practice in Nigeria. Greenhouse productions, deployment of microtuber propagation technologies and the likes that will enable us override the challenges of climate change. All these are things that we must look at, and we must look at seriously and be futuristic in our approach in policy promulgation. I would like to stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manzo, for your excellent remarks, which you actually touched on policy in several dimensions. But just for emphasis, you emphasize that we need to come out of the current situations where our policies are at cross purposes. And you gave a very illustrative example where trade is on exclusive list, but agriculture is on concurrent list. These are areas that need to be harmonized for for effective service delivery. You also express some fears and mentioning about the anchor borrowers that has become very successful, but then to what extent has this been institutionalized so as to ensure sustainability? How can we ensure that after the current administration, the anchor borrowers program is going to be in place. Um, and then you mentioned about the commodity exchange, why why there is a need for it to be private sector to be private sector led rather than the current format that is government owned, government controlled, and government um, uh, driven. We need to look at that. And of course, you talk about aggregators. I think for our viewers and listeners, these are very exciting areas that some of us that want to go into agriculture, think about becoming an aggregator if you don't want to go into primary production. These are excellent opportunities. And then you talked about the need for certification of the extension system. How do we know who is an extension service delivery expert? You know, all of this. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, um, thank you so much for this. And we are going to our next speaker, and in person of Ms. Titi Lokbe Ojo. She is actually the acting executive secretary for the network of practicing non-oil exporters of Nigeria. May I invite Ms. Ojo to have the floor and share with us in the next 5 minutes so that we can look at the questions from the audience. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Because I couldn't hear Dr. Godwin anymore, and I still can't hear you right now. I don't know what it is.
But I can hear
Can you
you
hear me?
very well. I can
So
hear
you can hear
you.
me, just type yes, because I was hearing and suddenly I couldn't hear anymore. But if you can hear me, please, can someone say yes so I can speak? Okay. If
Can
you
you
can
hear
hear me,
me?
that's fine. So let me just write on from here. Good morning, everyone. And I'll be speaking on trade. I'll be talking about export trade in particular in a few minutes. Of course, trade is a two-way street. It involves the importer and the exporter. There's someone buying and there's someone selling. And of course, we're selling within two countries. And it's very important to note that the person buying, the buyer, for example, has specifications. There's something he's looking out for. You can't pay for what you don't want. It's a rule, of course. So when we're talking about export, we're talking about who is buying and who is selling. In this case, we're looking at agribusiness. We're looking at commodity trading. I looked at some headlines from last year. There was a time that the DG of NAFDAC let out a cry and was all over the newspapers when she said over 6% of Nigeria's agricultural commodities are rejected by the EU, especially that. And that really broke my heart. Now, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing right here? There are critical issues we need to look at when it comes to trade. And one of that is quality. Quality is very key. International markets, there are regulations for what we do in that market. So some of the things that are acceptable to us here in Nigeria, for example, may not be acceptable in so many other parts of the world. So for anyone that's interested in trading agricultural commodities, quality is number one. And of course, when you're doing business in the export market, definitely you must start it with quality in mind. It's like working back from there. So you understand, okay, I'm sending this to China. This is the quality they want in terms of maybe it's cocoa you want to export. You must understand the quality and you must work back from there. And quality is something that starts from the beginning of production. Quality is not an afterthought. It can never be an afterthought. So every time we see rejections happening in the EU, in fact, they're also saying that US is rejecting some commodities from Nigeria. It means that there's something about quality that we're still not getting right. And that quality starts from when we even start production on the farm, even when we put the seed into the soil. It starts from there. Absolutely important. We can't begin to talk about quality when we are all done and it's time to ship and we want to start exporting. So quality starts from the beginning of the value chain. And it has to be assured throughout that value chain until it gets to where it's going to. Of course, also, when you talk about logistics, because there are three things that I need to just really touch quickly. Quality, number one, don't forget that. In fact, I have this formula that if you want to go into trade or export in particular, there are three things you look out for. One is quality, the second is quantity in terms of volume. Whoever is going to buy from you will require a certain volume. And it's very important to think about that. What is your capacity? What's your production capacity? So I think earlier speaker, somebody had talked about aggregation, forming clusters. This is where some of these things come in. Because someone wants about maybe a ton, 20 tons, 40 tons of a particular commodity, and he wants that every quarter, every month. In most cases, a particular individual may not be able to get that much in one place. So aggregation becomes the key. But while you're aggregating as well, you're aggregating in the right quality. So you want to ensure that quality is harmonized across board so that everything you're aggregating is of the same standard and it meets the demand of your buyer. So I talked about quality. The second is quantity, or you call it volume. And of course, volume or quantity is important because the buyer needs that particular commodity or that particular input in certain quantities for production. In some other, maybe it's a manufacturer. So it needs a certain quantity to feed into his production every quarter, every month, as stipulated in your contract anyway. And he wants to ensure that he will continue to get that particular volume per time, periodically. So volume is key. How do you assure that? Those are some of the headaches you have to think about. Okay. And the third will be price. Of course, you're selling at a price, your buyer is buying at a price. That price, the global prices of commodities, which as someone that wants to get involved in international trade, you must be interested in knowing what is today's market saying, what is global price for cashew, what's the global price for cocoa. You need to know what the global prices are. It's important also because in Nigeria we have our own challenges that impact on our pricing. So it helps you to see how you can look at how can you manage that whole thing so that you're also competitive. We're not the only ones selling in those markets we're going to. We have other countries selling in that same market. So you want to look at pricing. So three things I've talked about. I talked about quality, I talked about quantity, and I've talked about pricing. How do you stabilize your pricing? How do you manage pricing? How do you manage production from this end so that your overheads do not shoot so high that your price becomes uncompetitive? These are things you need to start thinking about. Then, of course, apart from these three that I just talked about, comes the issue of logistics when it comes to trade. And when I talk about logistics, I'm talking about moving the produce from one place, from Nigeria, to where it's going to. In this case, if it's China, we're moving from Nigeria to China, Nigeria to Lome, Nigeria to Singapore. Now, a lot of things can happen in between from when the shipment occurs to when it gets to where it's going to. So the issue of logistics is key. How do you move your goods? How do you move produce? How do you move your exports? Anyone listening to me right now that is interested in this, you need to ensure that your logistics is tight. It's very important. Now you're talking about logistics in terms of days to deliver. So for example, the buyer is saying he wants this to be delivered in the next 3 weeks. I hope you know that you could put this produce or this commodity on a ship and the ship will not sail even in the 3 weeks you're talking about. It might even get to where it's going to in another 6 months. Now you've messed up the entire contract. So logistics is very important. And it's not about looking for what is cheap. You're looking for what is effective. You're looking for the kind of logistics that would help you achieve your aim. And that's where we talk about freight forwarders and those that play in that space to ensure that what is sent is what is delivered. Quite a number of things happen in between. Even and then in this case, you will begin to talk about insurance because anything could happen from when your products departs to when it gets to where it's going to. So issues of insurance will have to come in. And these are places where you see private sector play. They play in these spaces. Logistics is almost everything, if you ask me. Honestly, it's critical because there have been stories that touch the heart, stories that touch the heart in that logistics space alone. A senior colleague of mine had done a shipment that didn't arrive in Canada till about 7 months, and in that 7 months, a couple of things on that shipment had expired. So you see how important logistics is. Sometimes your ship is transshipped, so it could get to another country where your ship will berth for a while. If there's a political crisis, it can just it can grind your ship to a halt in that space. And of course, it just delayed. And yeah, here you are in Nigeria, just sulking and wondering, God, what is this? So also, you need to get information. You need to be very deliberate about information. What is going on around you? What is going on in the countries that these things are going to pass through? Who is your freight forwarder? Are they sound enough to advise you on the best steps to take? There's some shipments you can also go by air. It depends on the kind of commodity. Some commodities should not stay longer than a particular period before it gets to where it's going to. So you must start thinking of issues of air freighting, where your products can get to where it's going in less than 24 hours. So these are different ways, because when we talk about logistics and movement, we have air, we have sea, and we have land. And these are things you have to consider when it comes to movement of exportable products. Very important. Let me just wrap this up quickly because we don't have much time. Financing. Now, the issue of financing, almost everyone says they will need finance, but I think someone has also mentioned earlier that even banks don't easily give financing these days. So, as a first-time exporter, someone that's engaging in trade for the first time, there's a lot you still need to do that can build trust with your bankers, and you have to give it the time it takes to do so. If your first shipment is done by maybe not through the commercial banks, because let me also mention to you that interest rates are a big deal. We have banks like Nexim, for example, that have export financing, they provide export financing. We have other alternative sources of financing where some belong to groups, cooperatives that they do collect, aggregated shipments, and everybody puts some fund into that movement and they share their costs to move their first shipment, for example. But really, financing, if you really want to get finance, even from the same Nexim or commercial banks, you need to also look at, getting it's more or less like a proof of concept. I've done this before and I've done it well. You've mastered a couple of things in terms of your logistics, in terms of quality. You've delivered to your buyer once or twice, and your quality has just been on top. You're on top of your game when it comes to quality in terms of the product you're moving. That provides some assurance to your bankers that you know what you're doing, you've tried this, you've tested the waters, you know how this works, you understand the operationalization of the entire trade space in itself. It requires some time as well to build that up, to build that reputation, and you must give it all it takes. It's not going to be easy. It's not, yeah, because even when it comes to issue of quality, it's a tough one. When Nigeria's products are rejected up to almost 80% in the EU for it, just alone, it tells you there's so much about this that we need to take care of from our own side. You see, people that want to export, they cut corners, they don't get their phytosanitary certificates, and they don't go through the regular institutions, the regulatory institutions that need to confirm that this thing is ready to be shipped and is at the right quality. These are the things that create bad reputation as well for us in international markets. So please, I would want to wrap up with this. Reputational risk is a big deal for us as a country, and it's not helping matters. When people see a container from Nigeria, it's like the red flag just comes up quickly, and they begin to search our containers as if there's something more to it, and some other containers are moving. It's because each time a Nigerian ships and quality is jeopardized, and those things are rejected or destroyed, it just puts a red flag on Nigeria. So I want to admonish everyone here, please, anyone that wants to go into international trade, don't forget three things. Quality, number one. Quantity in terms of volumes, how much can you aggregate to meet the demand of your buyer? And then, of course, price. What makes you competitive is absolutely necessary. And don't forget the issue of reputation. It's very key. Do it right all the time. Ship right all the time. Get it right all the time. It's very important, because if you do it well, you are also giving us a good name in the international market. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you so much, Titi, for that wonderful presentation. I think it was very insightful and quite explanatory. And these are things that prospecting investors should actually take cognizance of. Very simple, but very, very key. For instance, she talked about the issue of information, that you need to have information. If your goods are transiting different geographies, you need to have information in terms of whether those geographies would allow you to transit those goods that you are exporting. It's very key. And then she also talked about the issues of price. You need to be on top of the price. You need to be the price that you are selling must be right. It must be competitive, and it is key. And then she talked about the need for us to ensure zero rejection, because once goods are rejected, then it rubs on other exporters also, and it rubs on the country as a whole. So thank you so much, Titi, for that presentation. And as the different speakers spoke, I took down some questions that I would want them to respond to. For instance, the issue of sustainability was discussed, and I wanted to ask the speakers how do they see agriculture production in Nigeria in particular? How sustainable are we? How effective is forward contracting? Because one of the speakers spoke about farmers not having forward contracting. What is the trust? Is it possible to have this? How do farmers and also investors respect contracts? And how has it been effective in your own experience? Do we have the processing machines, for instance? We talk about processing, but I know of agricultural commodities like mango, for instance, orange, those oranges. If you go around the Benue axis and also the Kaduna axis, these are produced en masse, and actually you see them being wasted as they drop off the trees. So how do we get processing equipment for things like this? Trade should be on concurrent list. Dr. Manzo emphasized. How do we make that happen? And what steps should we think of in terms of actually ensuring the institutionalization of the anchor borrowers? These are some of the questions that we have here that our panelists will actually respond to, but probably we will go on a break, on a short break, and when we come back, I will also allow the technical team to bring some questions so that the panelists will respond to. All right, so we shared some questions, and let's hear from the audience before we call our speakers to speak on some of the issues raised. We have from Dr. Benjamin Wayo, and this question is for Dr. Megeri. From your experience as part of a state government, what is your advice on how to actually bring up, drive, and change policies that last? Thank you. Dr. Manzo, can you respond to that? You can speak, Dr. Manzo.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. Well, naturally, the drive for policy or change of policy in itself is generally from stakeholders who are affected primarily by that policy. So here, if we are looking at this, we are going to have to look at the major players in agriculture. For example, this group that has organized this event, the Nigeria Agri-Business Group, has been at the forefront of driving policies, one of which is the tomato policy that we achieved in 2019. We have also driven the policy on the new Fertilizer Act, among others. As we speak, we are also driving a policy on national commodity grading and standards and grading. We are also driving a policy on the framework for climate smart agriculture, and all this we are doing. And we engage the major stakeholders such as commodity associations and the other private sector players as well as the public sector. The whole idea is to get the buy-in of all these stakeholders, so that at the appropriate time we will hand it over to the appropriate government agencies such as Federal Ministry of Agriculture or Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment. So in driving policy, like I said, this is a major, these are major players that can drive change or the promulgation of new policies. Another way to drive policy is to look at your representatives, both at the state and the National Assembly, and give them the ingredients and the tools to use to drive the promulgation of a new policy or the change of the policy. However, when it comes to the issue of agriculture and trade being in the concurrent and the exclusive legislative list, this is something that will require a constitutional an amendment of the constitution, and therefore that is something that will require a lot of lobbying, a lot of stakeholders engagement for us to see reason why this should be done. But in the end, we are all in this, and if we all come together, especially some of the key players stakeholders in agriculture, we can drive this policy. It's not something that is too difficult to do, but it requires a lot of commitment. Sometimes it takes years to do it, like the national quality policy, which started long before 2016, just got passed last year. So these things take a while sometimes, but
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please. Do we have another question from the audience? There is some questions that I ask in terms of the issues that revolves around sustainability. I don't know whether we have Mr. Imal to respond to it. How do you see agriculture, the sustainability, our current agricultural practices? How sustainable are they in your view?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So thank you very much. I think we still have a long way to go. Most of our efforts have been. I mean, our value chain is very fragmented, first and foremost. So I thank all the people that are making efforts to now try to integrate all our efforts, both from government, private sector, the actual operators, as well as the civil society organizations and NGOs. And one must commend the efforts that are being made. But we are a long way from where we should be. Now, the various speakers have so eloquently spoken, and one thing I want to point out to the fact is that we are in a global playing arena. We are not just in our own little cocoon somewhere. So, like Madam Titi said, like Dr. Magari said, and even Madam Helene and the lady, Madam Muru, that said earlier, there are standards. There are, from quality to practices. There are standards that have to conform to global best practices. And these things are becoming more and more, how would I say, they're becoming more accepted globally. So even the demand end of the value chain in agriculture is putting a certain level of demand on all of us, all the way backwards to the production end, to the supply end, that things have to be done in a particular way, according to certain standards, according to we have to meet these global best practices. So if that is actually the case, it means that it's not just about producing, it's not just about selling, it's not just about immediate consumption and gratification. It's about long-term planning, and that is where I think we still have a very long way. That's why I said, when I was speaking initially, I said that this is a gradual process. We will not be able to achieve the sustainable practices in a hurry, but it takes a lot of effort from all sides for us to see things, and do things with a long-term perspective in focus. With a long-term perspective in focus. Yeah, so that's what I would want to add. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Imal, for that. There's also another question that I raised, and this has to do with the issue of processing equipment. Maybe Helen can throw some light on this. How easy is it to actually get good processing equipment? We've seen people invest in processing and they never get the best out of the processing equipment because of downtime, low quality equipment. Please, can you share your experience?
Okay, thank you. So my response to that is that always work with a consultant, work with an expert, never go into a field just using the internet. I know Google is your friend, but whatever you want to do in agribusiness, always start with an expert. That's what consultants are there for. So if you want to buy any kind of equipment, there are people who sell equipment locally. And you can also go on AliExpress to check for equipment. But I would advise that if you are just starting, work with local distributors of equipment so that they can guide you on the kind of equipment you should buy. Remember that the equipment that we buy from abroad sometimes may not work well in Nigeria. Sometimes they need to reconfigure or make some adjustments so that our power situation and our voltage can work with the equipment. So that's what I would say. It's really quite easy. Look for consultants, join a community. Quite a number of us on this panel are members of some communities on agribusiness. So it's important to talk to an expert. It will help. I'll be happy to provide some insights offline. You can check me on LinkedIn. You see me there and inbox me. We can chat about this.
Thank you so much. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I think this is where we will draw the curtain for this session. We will give room for a hot break so people can walk around and refresh and come back by 11 o'clock when we will have the panel session. Thank you so much for your participation, and I do hope that you will join us again. Thank you.
There's a story to be told, a future to behold. There is more to who we are than what they hear. We have love within our soul, fire in our bones. We've got everything it takes to make it here. There's much more within our soil, more than just our oil. We can grow the food to feed the whole world square. Agriculture is the key. There's treasure in the trees. The time is now, the land is green, wealth is here. This is our nation, this is our land. Nigeria is ours, we have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, wealth is here. There are 200 billion dreams. Anyone of this is able to begin a spark and change the world. There's innovation everywhere, from Aba to Ife to Kaduna. The land is green, the wealth is here. Yeah, this is our nation, this is our land. Yeah. Nigeria is ours, we have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, the wealth is here.
If you take a look around from the north to south, there are opportunities to make it here. But if all you ever dream is to go overseas, tell me how you'll ever know that wealth is here. Oh, yeah, oh.
This is our nation, this is our land. Oh, Nigeria is ours, we have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, the wealth is here. So pass on the baton, pass on the torch. Nigeria is ours, we have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, the wealth is here. Oh yeah. So this is our nation, this is our land. Oh yeah, Nigeria is ours, we have everything we need. If we could only see, the time